Evelyn, don't trust our son. Those were the first words on the voicemail, a voicemail recorded by my husband Richard Carter on the very day he died. The moment I heard his voice, my knees almost gave out. I was standing in my quiet Atlanta kitchen, the evening sun slipping behind the pine trees outside, rinsing the last dish from dinner. My old phone, one I kept only because it still held a few photos of Richard, buzzed on the counter. One new voicemail. From his number, from a man who'd been gone for an entire year. At first, I told myself it was a glitch, a system error, some piece of data finally making its way through the network. But the second I pressed play, all the breath left my body. His voice was strained, trembling, not like the man who used to laugh his way through every hardship. Evelyn, something's wrong. They're planning something with the house, with you. If you hear this, please be careful. Then the message cut off. No goodbye. Just fear. Fear from a man who never feared anything. For a long moment, the only sounds in the kitchen were the humming refrigerator and the wall clock ticking, like it was counting down to something I couldn't see yet. My hands turned cold. The room felt too still, too quiet, like the world itself knew something I didn't. I didn't understand any of it then. But that impossible voicemail, that last message from my husband, was the opening crack in a secret my family had been hiding from me. A truth so close, so cruel, and so deliberate, it would shake the foundations of everything I believed about love, loyalty, and blood. The message wouldn't stop echoing in my head. Evelyn, don't trust our son. I must have replayed it 10 times, maybe more. Each time, Richard's voice hit me the same way, sharp, urgent, wrong. He was gone, a whole year gone, yet his warning sounded like it had been recorded an hour ago. I sat at my kitchen table, elbows pressed into the wood, trying to breathe steadily. The room felt colder than it should. The ice maker hummed. A clock on the wall ticked too loudly, like it was keeping time for the dead. I stared at the phone in my hand. That old smartphone I kept only because it still held photos of us. Beach trips, church anniversaries, birthdays. I never expected it to hold a message like this. Something's wrong. They're planning something with the house. With you. I closed my eyes, tried to steady the shake in my chest. Richard had never been a man who scared easily, not during back surgeries, not when we lost our first mortgage, not when the doctor said he needed more tests, but in that voicemail, he sounded afraid. I whispered the words again, they. Marcus and Danielle, my son and daughter-in-law. I sat back, letting the chair creak under my weight. Marcus had been a quiet kid, a gentle soul who used to cry when he stepped on ants. When he brought Danielle home, he looked proud, like he finally stood a little taller next to the woman he loved. She was polished, ambitious, sharp around the edges. I accepted that. I tried to welcome her, tried to fit myself into her world. But lately, things felt off. Marcus asking too many questions about the house. Danielle walking through my rooms like she was inspecting a property she already owned. Papers they needed me to sign, but never explained clearly. Too many mentions of long-term care, better options, easier arrangements. I pushed the thoughts away every time. That's what mothers do. We excuse, we soften, we pretend. But Richard had seen something I hadn't. I checked the timestamp again, July 14th, 6:12 p.m. He died at 6:45, 33 minutes. 33 minutes between his warning and his death. I leaned forward, gripping the phone tighter, as if I could squeeze the truth out of it. I hit play again, listened for every detail. There were sounds behind him, car engines, footsteps, a door slamming. His breathing was uneven. He said my name like he was rushing. Evelyn, please, be careful. Then the line cut. I set the phone down slowly, afraid that if I dropped it, I'd lose the last thing he ever tried to give me, the truth. My heart thudded hard in my chest. I stood and walked into the living room. It was dim, only lit by the street lamp filtering through the curtains. Richard's portrait sat on the mantel, him in his navy church suit grinning like he had nothing but time. Why didn't I know about this? I whispered. Why didn't anyone tell me? The house creaked. It always creaked. But tonight the sound felt like a warning. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. Outside, everything was calm, neighborhood quiet. A dog barking in the distance. A porch light next door flickering. Nothing seemed dangerous, but the danger wasn't outside. It was inside my own family. I returned to the kitchen, grabbed a notebook from the drawer, and wrote down every detail I could remember from the past year, every odd comment Marcus made, every time Danielle insisted I shouldn't worry about the paperwork, every moment that felt wrong but I brushed away. My hand tightened around the pen. Patterns started appearing, more than I wanted to admit. Why had Marcus wanted to update the insurance 2 months after Richard died? Why had Danielle suggested I tour an assisted living home? Twice, despite me being fully capable of living on my own? Why did they get tense when I mentioned my mortgage being fully paid off? I closed the notebook and pressed it to my chest, a slow breath. Then another. The truth wasn't clear yet, but my instincts were no longer silent. They were screaming. I moved back to Richard's portrait on the mantel. His eyes, brown, warm, steady, felt different now, like he'd left me one last mission. Protect yourself. Listen carefully. Don't pretend anymore. Richard, I whispered, what did you hear? What did you see? No answer. Just the low hum of the air conditioner kicking on. I sat again, this time in his old recliner. I held the phone to my ear one more time, letting his final words fall over me like cold rain. They were planning something. Something with the house. Something with me. I stared at the shadows along the hallway, shadows that suddenly felt like they were waiting. For the first time in my life, the place I'd lived for 40 years felt unfamiliar, like someone else had been walking through it with intentions I never saw coming. I didn't know the full truth yet. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever Richard tried to warn me about, it started with that voicemail, and it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep much after hearing that voicemail. I lay awake in my bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles above me. Each rotation felt like it was stirring up old memories I hadn't touched in years. Memories of who I was, who Richard was, and the life we built long before Marcus or Danielle ever had a say in it. Sometimes, to understand a warning, you have to go back. Back to the roots, back to the soil where everything grew. My name is Evelyn Carter, 68 years old, born and raised in Georgia. I've been living on Magnolia Street for almost 4 decades. This house has seen every season of my life. My joys, my heartbreaks, my failures, my rising again. When Richard and I bought it, we were barely making ends meet. He was working double shifts at the auto shop. I was working nights at the nursing home, lifting patients twice my size with arms that had no choice but to stay strong. We saved every penny. I used to count change in the kitchen with Marcus asleep in a laundry basket at my feet. Richard would walk in smelling like diesel and grease, kiss me on the forehead and say, "We're going to make it, Evie. Just hold on." And we did. Slowly, painfully. But we made it. That house wasn't just wood and brick. It was proof that all those years of sacrifice meant something. Every nail, every paint stroke, every porch chair, paid for with sweat, not shortcuts. When Marcus was 9, we planted a magnolia tree in the front yard. He begged for a dog, but we couldn't afford one, so we gave him a tree to care for. He watered it every afternoon after school. Sometimes he talked to it. "Grow big," he'd say, "so I can climb you." Back then he was gentle, soft-hearted, always worried about people. If I coughed twice, he'd bring me a glass of water. If Richard worked late, Marcus would sit on the porch steps waiting for him until the mosquitoes chased him inside. But people change. Pressure changes them, marriage changes them, money changes them even more. When Marcus went to college, first in our family to go, Richard and I worked harder, took extra shifts, sold the old Buick. We wanted him to have a life we never had. A life without fear of losing things. Looking back now, maybe we taught him the opposite of what we intended. He grew up wanting more, always more. A bigger apartment, nicer clothes, a better neighborhood, a different crowd. Nothing wrong with wanting better, until the wanting swallows a person whole. He met Danielle during his senior year. She came from a family that didn't know struggle. Her parents were the type who bought new appliances just because the old ones didn't match the kitchen aesthetic. I remember the first time she visited our home. She walked through the living room silently, her heels clicking against our old hardwood floors. Her eyes lingered on the dated furniture, the mismatched curtains, the chipped paint on the trim. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that measured things, not admired them. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I told myself she was just young, used to different things. But over time, her comments slipped out like tiny knives. "This house feels small." Don't you get lonely here, Evelyn? You should think about selling. A house this old needs so much work. Richard would glance at me from across the room, reading my thoughts before I said a word. After she left, he'd say, "Don't you listen to her, Evie. This house is ours, been ours, paid in full." I didn't realize how important that paid in full would become. Over the years, Marcus changed. He started speaking more like Danielle, quick, cautious, calculating. He cared too much about appearances, too much about investments, too much about what makes sense financially. He still hugged me on holidays, still called on my birthday, but something in his eyes grew colder, like he was looking past me, not at me. When Richard got sick, everything shifted again. The hospital bills, the stress, the fear. Marcus visited less. Danielle almost never came. She said hospitals made her anxious. Richard noticed too. One night, after Marcus rushed out early to deal with a deadline, Richard held my hand and said, "Our boy ain't the same, Evie. Watch him." I brushed it off. I didn't want to believe it. He was my only child. After Richard passed, things got quiet. Too quiet. Marcus became helpful. Danielle became concerned. They offered to handle paperwork, pay bills, lighten my load. Danielle toured an assisted living center on her own and brought me the brochure. I laughed it off at the time, but a part of me cracked inside. Now, after hearing Richard's voicemail, that crack felt like it had been there all along. I walked through the house that night, touching the walls, the furniture, the memories. Pictures of Marcus in his graduation gown. A photo of Richard holding baby Marcus in one arm, grilling burgers with the other. Our wedding picture, my hair natural and thick, Richard tall and smiling like he won the lottery. Everything in this house had a purpose. Everything told a story. Everything held weight. And suddenly, for the first time, I wondered if my son saw any of that weight, or if he only saw the dollar signs attached to it. The voicemail wasn't just a warning. It was a mirror. One that forced me to look back, to see the fractures running through our family long before Richard tried to reach me. And as painful as it was, I knew something now with absolute clarity. Understanding the past wasn't optional. It was the only way to survive what was coming next. That night, after reliving every memory I could bear, exhaustion finally caught up with me. Not the kind that makes you sleepy, the kind that weighs on your bones, the kind that sits on your chest like a heavy stone. By the time I went to bed, the house felt different. The air felt thicker. Even the silence seemed to have claws. I lay there in the dark, staring at the faint outline of the ceiling fan, listening to it whir in uneven beats. I kept the phone on the nightstand, screen facing up, as if Richard might call again. As if somehow one message from the dead wasn't enough. But the more I replayed his words in my head, the deeper I sank into something I didn't want to name. Fear, not fear of ghosts. Fear of the living. A part of me kept whispering, "Evelyn, you're being dramatic. It's grief. It's imagination." But another part, older, wiser, built from surviving 68 years of life, answered back, "No, you're not imagining. You're waking up." I turned on my side and stared at Richard's empty pillow. It still had an indentation from the last morning he woke up beside me. I ran my fingers over the fabric, the cotton soft from years of washing. I whispered into the darkness, "Why didn't I listen sooner, Richard? Why didn't I see what you saw?" No answer, just the creak of the house settling. My eyes started stinging. Tears pushed forward before I could stop them. I'm not the type to break easily. I held my father's hand as he died. I worked night shifts lifting grown men when my back screamed in pain. I buried neighbors, friends, aunts, uncles. But that night, the tears came heavy. I cried the way people cry when they realize they weren't blind. They were refusing to look. At some point, I got out of bed and walked to the bathroom just to splash water on my face. The mirror above the sink caught me off guard. The woman staring back wasn't the Evelyn I used to know. Her hair was grayer. Her skin looked tired. But what stood out most were her eyes. They weren't scared, they were furious. And underneath the fury, something else was stirring. Resolve. I turned off the light and went back to bed, but sleep didn't come. My head spun with moments I'd ignored, small clues that now glowed like warning signs. Marcus asking for my bank login just to help. Danielle offering to clean out drawers without asking. The way they exchanged glances whenever I mentioned the house's value. The way they flinched when I said I wanted to update the will after Richard passed. Pieces. Little pieces I had never connected. Pieces that now formed a picture I didn't want to see. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not inside, outside, soft, slow, passing near the living room window. My breath caught. I sat up, listening hard. Footsteps again, circling toward the porch. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over 911, my heart hammered in my chest. I told myself it could be a stray cat or a neighbor's kid or someone taking a walk. But deep down, something whispered, "You're not imagining danger. You're sensing it." The footsteps faded. The night went quiet again. Too quiet. I lay awake until morning, watching the sky lighten from black to blue. When sunlight finally crept through the blinds, I sat up and knew something had shifted inside me. I wasn't the same woman who pressed play on that voicemail. Something broke open in me during the night. Something I didn't know I was still capable of. Courage. The scary kind. The kind that comes from hitting bottom. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. My hands didn't shake this time. I sat at the table, notebook in front of me, and I wrote a single sentence across the top of a new page. When did I start buying love? I stared at the question for a long time. Then I wrote more. Every loan I gave Marcus over the years. Every bill I paid. Every time I said it's okay when it wasn't. Every time I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. Every time I trusted their words over my own instincts. Line after line, memory after memory. It felt like bleeding out truth I had held too long. When I finished, I whispered, "No more." It wasn't loud, but it was final. Then the Gyo Nuok Tran Lai arrived. At 8:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Mom, we need to come by tonight. There are some documents you need to sign." That was it. No explanation, no greeting, just a command dressed as concern. My stomach dropped, my pulse spiked. My hand tightened around the phone so hard I almost cracked it. If I had read that message yesterday, I might have obeyed. I might have said yes, trusted him, believed he was looking out for me. But after that night, after that voicemail, after seeing who I had let myself become, absolutely not. That text wasn't just suspicious, it was confirmation. Richard didn't leave me a warning. He left me a map. And now, the pieces were falling into place. I placed the phone down gently, took a deep breath, and said to the empty room, "This ends with me." And for the first time since Richard died, I felt alive. The moment a woman stops being afraid is the moment everything changes. The text from Marcus sat on my screen like a threat wrapped in politeness. "Mom, we need to come by tonight. There are some documents you need to sign." I read it again and again. Each time the meaning sharpened. It wasn't a request, it was a schedule, a plan. One I was never meant to question, but I wasn't the same woman I was yesterday. I set the phone down, poured myself another cup of coffee, and let the bitterness wake up every corner of my mind. The house was quiet, the morning light soft and gentle. Nothing about the moment looked dangerous, but inside me, something fierce had already taken root. Today, I was going to act. I started with the simplest thing. I locked every window, every door, every latch. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. Women my age learn the difference. Then I made my bed, changed my blouse, washed my face. Not because I needed to look good, but because I needed to feel steady, present, awake. When I was done, I sat on the edge of the bed and reached under the nightstand for the shoebox Richard had kept his small things in. Old receipts, pocket knives, keys to locks we no longer owned. Inside was a folded sheet of paper with his handwriting on it. "Evie, if anything happens to me, call James Whitfield. Trust him." I'd forgotten this note existed. Back then, my grief was too loud to let me see, but now, reading it with clear eyes, something clicked. James Whitfield wasn't a stranger. He was Richard's old union buddy, a quiet man, straightforward, always showed up when someone needed help moving furniture or fixing a leak. He also happened to be a retired paralegal. I grabbed my keys. The morning sun was bright, too bright for the heaviness I carried. I drove down Magnolia Street slowly, every mailbox familiar, every porch a piece of my past. I had lived here longer than most people on this block. This neighborhood watched my son grow, watched him fall, watched him rise, watched him drift. A few houses down, Miss Lorraine, my oldest neighbor, was watering her front lawn. She waved. I waved back. A part of me wanted to stop and tell her everything, but the words felt too fragile to speak yet. Not until I knew the truth, not until I had proof. So I kept driving. James Whitfield lived in a small brick house on the west side of Atlanta. When he opened the door and saw me, his eyebrows lifted. "Well, I'll be damned," he said softly. "Evelyn Carter, it's been a long time." I didn't bother with small talk. "I need your help, James." The look on his face shifted instantly, from surprise to concern. He stepped aside and let me in. His living room smelled like lemon polish and old books. There were framed photos of his late wife, of baseball teams, of picnics. It was the kind of room built by a gentle life. I sat on the couch. He sat across from me. "What's wrong?" he asked. I told him everything. Not the whole story, just what mattered. The voicemail, the timestamp, Marcus's text, the papers they wanted me to sign. Richard's fear. James didn't interrupt, didn't blink, didn't tell me I was imagining things. When I finished, he leaned back slowly and said one simple sentence. "Evelyn, you need a lawyer." My stomach dropped. Hearing it out loud made everything real. He continued, voice low and careful. "Your son might be setting up a guardianship case. If he convinces a judge you're incompetent, he can take control of your finances, your house, your medical choices, all of it. And you won't be able to stop him." My throat tightened. "Incompetent?" I repeated. "I'm not incompetent." "I know," James said gently. "But courts don't deal in truth, Evelyn. They deal in paperwork. And if he has documents ready, you need to protect yourself." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" He reached into a drawer, pulled out a card, and slid it across the table. "Her name is Attorney Linda Rowe, smart, tough as nails, specializes in elder protection cases. Call her today, not tomorrow." I stared at the card. White background, clean lettering, a lifeline in paper form. "Thank you, James," I whispered. "You don't owe me thanks," he replied. "Richard was my brother. I'm only sorry he didn't reach you in time." I closed my eyes for a moment. Time. Such a cruel word. I stepped outside and sat in my car with the door still open. My hands shook slightly as I dialed the number on the card. "Attorney Rowe's office, how can I help you?" "My name is Evelyn Carter," I said. I need to speak to Ms. Rowe. It's urgent." "Is this regarding potential financial exploitation?" the assistant asked. I froze. "Yes," I whispered. She exhaled softly like she'd heard this too many times. "Ms. Rowe can see you at 3 o'clock today. Will that work?" "Yes, I'll be there." When the call ended, I sat still for long seconds, letting the weight of what I had just set in motion sink into my bones. This was my first real move. My first step away from denial. My first step toward protecting myself. And maybe, just maybe, toward honoring Richard's final plea. As I drove back toward Magnolia Street, something strange happened. For the first time in months, maybe years, I sat up straight. My shoulders lifted. My breathing steadied. I knew something now. I was not powerless. I was not alone. And I was not the woman Marcus assumed I was. When I pulled into my driveway, a truck I didn't recognize slowed down near my house. The driver glanced at me too long before moving on. A chill crawled up my spine, but this time? I didn't go inside afraid. I walked through my front door with a new thought. Tonight, when Marcus and Danielle show up, they're not meeting the Evelyn they expect. They're meeting the Evelyn I forgot I could be. The moment truth walks through your front door, you feel it before you see it. By the time evening rolled in, the sky over Atlanta had gone that soft orange-pink color Richard used to love. He'd always say it looked like the world was trying to calm itself down, but it didn't calm me. Not tonight. Tonight was the night Marcus and Danielle were coming. Tonight was the night I would see their faces and finally look at them with new eyes. I cleaned nothing, cooked nothing, prepared nothing. I wanted the house exactly as it was. Unhidden, unmasked, just like I needed them to be. Around 6:45 p.m., I heard a car door slam, then another. Footsteps on the walkway. Confident footsteps, too confident. Footsteps of people who believed they were walking into a conversation they controlled. My heartbeat leveled instead of rising. Funny how fear dissolves once you understand it. I sat in Richard's recliner, back straight, hands resting calmly in my lap. When the door knock came, I didn't rush. 3 knocks, firm, impatient. I stood up slowly, walked to the door, opened it. They were both there. Marcus looked tired, tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes, but there was something else beneath the exhaustion. Something tight, something nervous. Danielle, on the other hand, looked fresh, polished, lipstick perfect. A folder tucked neatly under one arm like she was about to make a pitch. "Hi, Mom," Marcus said, trying to smile. "Evelyn," Danielle added like always, light, polite, and distant. "Come in," I said. They stepped inside. Danielle's eyes darted around the house quickly, as if checking if something had changed since she'd last been here. Marcus inhaled deeply, the way guilty men often do. "We won't take much of your time," Danielle said immediately. I almost smiled. She was used to controlling the pace, not tonight. "Sit," I said, motioning toward the couch. They sat. I didn't. Instead, I remained standing, leaning against the doorway between the living room and hall. I could feel their eyes on me, assessing me, studying my posture. Neither of them knew what had already changed. Danielle opened the folder. "Your son and I have been working hard to make sure everything is organized for you," she began. "We found some paperwork that needs your signature, just standard things." Marcus nodded. "Really basic stuff, Mom, just to make things easier." "Easier for who?" I didn't answer. I let the silence breathe. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked calmly. Danielle slid a document halfway out of the folder. "Financial authorization forms and a medical directive. Nothing major. Just routine things for someone your age." Someone your age. The phrase stung, but in a way that sharpened me, not weakened me. Marcus cleared his throat. "It's just to help us help you, Mom." "Help," I repeated softly. "Like when you asked for my bank login? Was that to help me, too?" Marcus blinked. Danielle's smile faltered just for a second, but she caught herself quickly. "That was just to check a balance," she said. I tilted my head. "You never explained what balance." Neither of them spoke. I walked forward slowly, stopping right in front of the coffee table. I stayed quiet until the silence pressed into them. Finally, I said very softly, "I got a message today." Marcus froze. Danielle narrowed her eyes. "A message?" Marcus asked. "One from who?" "Your father." Danielle let out a short, confused laugh. "Evelyn, your husband passed." "I know when he passed," I said sharply. "I was there." She went silent. I pulled the phone from my pocket, set it on the table, turned the screen toward them. Marcus's face lost all color. Danielle leaned forward, trying to hide the flicker of panic in her eyes. "What message exactly?" "A voicemail," I said. "Recorded the day he died." Marcus swallowed hard. Danielle's hands tightened on the folder. I pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room. "Evelyn, don't trust our son." Marcus stood up immediately. "Mom, wait." I held up a hand. "Sit down." He sat. Richard's voice continued. "Something's wrong. They're planning something with the house. With you, please, be careful." The message ended. Silence dropped like a weight. Marcus's hands were shaking. "Mom, I can explain." "No," I said quietly. "You can't." Danielle jumped in. "This is being taken out of context. People say strange things when they're sick." "Your father wasn't confused," I cut in. "He was afraid, and now I know why." Marcus exhaled hard and rubbed his forehead. "Look, Mom, we were just trying to look out for you. You live alone. This house is old. This house is mine," I said firmly. "Paid for with sweat I don't owe anyone an apology for." Danielle's eyes sharpened. There it was. The real her. The one Richard had heard. The one he tried to warn me about. "It's irresponsible for you to keep living this way," she said, tone suddenly cold. "We're trying to protect you, whether you appreciate it or not." Marcus shot her a look, but didn't contradict her. I stepped back, breathing slowly. Calm, controlled. "Thank you for showing me who you both are," I said. Danielle stiffened. "Meaning what?" "Meaning I won't sign anything tonight, or ever. And the next time you want to discuss my future..." I paused, letting the weight settle. "You can talk to my lawyer." Both their eyes widened. "Lawyer?" Marcus whispered. "Yes," I said, "and she'll be handling everything from now on." The silence broke like glass. Danielle stood up fast, grabbing her folder. We should go. Marcus followed her, but before he walked out, he turned back to me, eyes glossy, jaw tight. Mom, why would you do this? Because Richard told me the truth, I said, and now I finally believe him. They left without another word. The door closed, the house exhaled, and for the first time in a long time I felt safe, not because danger was gone, but because I had finally stepped toward the fight. The truth doesn't arrive quietly. It walks in wearing heels and carrying a stack of documents. The next morning I woke up before the sun. I didn't plan to. My body just decided sleep wasn't part of the day anymore. I sat at the edge of the bed, letting the cool air settle around me. My mind was clearer than it had been in months. Today was the day I would meet attorney Linda Rowe. I brewed coffee, but barely touched it. My appetite was gone, replaced with a sharp, steady focus I didn't know I still had. I dressed simply, a clean blouse, slacks, the good earrings Richard bought me on our 10th anniversary. I wanted to look like a woman who still had control of her life. Because I did. By noon I was ready. By 2 I was steady. At 3 o'clock sharp, I stepped through the glass doors of Rowe and Associates. The office was modern but warm. Soft lighting, walls lined with framed degrees and awards. A receptionist with kind eyes greeted me. You must be Mrs. Carter. Attorney Rowe will be right with you. I nodded. A few minutes later, a tall woman with a navy suit and a confident stride appeared. She extended her hand. Mrs. Carter, I'm Linda Rowe. Her grip was firm, solid, the kind of handshake that told you she'd fight for you without hesitation. Thank you for seeing me, I said. James spoke very highly of you, she replied. Come into my office. Let's talk. Her office was orderly, not a paper out of place. A single plant sat by the window, somehow thriving, even in low light. We sat. She opened a notebook. James told me you received a concerning voicemail, she said. I handed her my phone. It's better if you hear it. She listened. And despite years of cases, years of hardened experience, I watched her eyebrows lift slightly. The message ended. She replayed the last line. Please, be careful. She exhaled and leaned back. That, she said slowly, is not something we ignore. What does it mean? I asked. It means your husband believed you were in danger, financially and possibly legally. Her tone was calm but serious, the kind of serious that makes the room feel colder. Mrs. Carter, she continued, have your son or daughter-in-law ever asked you to sign anything related to property, banking, or medical decisions? Yes, I said, several times. And did you sign? No. Something in me always hesitated. Good, she said, very good. She reached for a file on her desk, a general intake folder. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I answered each one, clear, honest, steady. After 20 minutes, she paused her writing and looked at me in a way that made my stomach tighten. Mrs. Carter, there is a very real possibility your son was preparing to establish guardianship over you. The word hit hard. Guardianship? I whispered. That's for people who can't take care of themselves. Yes, she said. And once granted, you would lose control over your finances, your home, even your daily decisions. Your son would have full authority. My hands tightened around my purse strap. And he'd be able to sell the house? She added quietly. There it was. The truth I had been circling, the core of Richard's fear. Why would he do that? I asked softly. Why would my own son? Money, she said gently without drama. Financial strain, influence from his wife, pressure. Sometimes people justify terrible things when they convince themselves they're helping. I swallowed hard. Mrs. Carter, she went on, I need to check something. She turned to her computer, typing quickly, eyes scanning, lines of text reflecting in her glasses. After a moment, she stopped, her jaw flexed. She turned the monitor slightly toward me. My blood ran cold. There on the screen was a list of recent court inquiries logged through the county system. One line was highlighted, Inquiry, Guardianship of Evelyn Carter. Inquirer, Marcus Carter. Date, 2 weeks ago. My breath left me. 2 weeks. 2 weeks before the voicemail resurfaced. 2 weeks before everything snapped into place. Linda placed a hand on the desk, grounding the moment. He hasn't filed anything yet, she said. It's only an inquiry, but it means he was preparing. Preparing, planning, waiting for the right moment. Maybe waiting for me to sign something without reading it. I closed my eyes. The room felt small. I don't want to lose my home, I whispered. I don't want to lose the life Richard and I built. Linda leaned forward, voice steady, sure. And you won't? Not with me on your side. We're going to protect you. And your assets. We act today. She handed me a pen. I recommend we draft 3 documents. 1. A revocation of any assumed authority your son might claim. 2. A declaration of competency signed by your doctor. 3. A trust arrangement listing you as sole controller of your home and finances. I blinked. A trust? Yes, she said. Once your house is placed inside a trust in your name, neither Marcus nor Danielle can touch it. Not legally, not financially, not even with guardianship. Richard mentioned a trust once, I whispered. And he was right to, she replied. I stared at the pen, at the papers, at the truth that had unfolded like a storm cloud finally breaking open. Do you want to go forward? She asked. My voice didn't shake. Yes. From that moment, she got to work. Documents printed, forms signed, appointments scheduled. By the time I left her office, the sun was low, golden, warm. But something inside me had changed again. For the first time since Richard died, I felt protected. Not by him, not by fear, but by my own strength, my own clarity, my own will. And I knew one thing beyond any doubt. Marcus and Danielle had no idea the war they had just started, or the woman they were now dealing with. Danger doesn't always knock. Sometimes it watches first. When I drove home from Attorney Rowe's office that evening, I felt steadier than I had in weeks, maybe months. The papers she had me sign were tucked safely in my purse, legal shields I didn't even know I needed until now. The sun was dropping low, turning everything outside a warm honey color, but the warmth didn't reach me. As soon as I turned onto Magnolia Street, a strange chill settled over me, sharp, quiet, instinctive. The kind of chill a woman learns to trust after a lifetime of reading rooms, reading people, reading danger. Something felt off. I slowed as I approached my driveway. My magnolia tree stood still, leaves barely moving. But in the shadow near the porch rail, I noticed something. A cigarette butt. Not mine. Not Richard's. We never smoked. Not any neighbor I knew. I parked, stepped out, and walked to it. The ash was fresh, still warm between my fingertips. Someone had been sitting outside my house, watching. My breath slowed, not from fear, but focus. I wasn't the same Evelyn anymore. I went inside, locked the door, and checked every latch again. Twice. I turned on the hall light, then another, letting the house glow like a lighthouse warding off a storm. Then I saw it. Something else out of place. The curtains in my living room were pulled back. I never leave them open in the evening. Never. I approached slowly, each step calculated. I touched the fabric. It wasn't dusty, meaning someone had pulled them back recently, maybe earlier today, maybe while I was gone. Not tonight, I whispered. Not ever again. I closed them firmly, then checked the rest of the house, room by room, window by window. Everything looked normal, but normal can be the most deceptive thing. An hour later, I remembered the door camera Marcus installed last Christmas to keep me safe. I hadn't checked it in months, mostly because he still had access to the account, but Attorney Rowe had told me exactly what to do. Reset passwords, lock everything down, so I did. And then I checked the footage. At first, nothing unusual. Mailman, kids biking, Miss Lorraine walking her dog. Then, at 2:12 p.m., while I was still at Rowe's office, a figure appeared. Not close, not clear, but standing across the street, half hidden behind a maple tree. A man, tall, dark jacket, hands in pockets. He wasn't looking at passing cars. He wasn't using his phone. He was looking at my house, just staring. No movement, no fidgeting, just stillness, watching. My stomach tightened. My palms grew cold. Between 2:12 and 2:19 p.m., he didn't move an inch. Not until a car drove by and blocked the camera for a moment. When it passed, he was gone. I rewound. Watched again. Still gone. Like he had melted into the neighborhood. I replayed that clip 5 times, searching for any detail. Hair, shoes, posture, anything. But the angle was bad, and he kept his head low. Still, something felt familiar. Maybe not him, but the presence, the intention. Someone wasn't just curious. Someone was checking the house. Maybe checking me. Around 7:45 p.m., while I was still at the kitchen table reviewing footage, my phone rang. Unknown number, no name, no location. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it stopped. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Same number, same silence on the caller ID. My chest tightened. My fingers hovered over the screen. I answered. Hello? Silence, then breathing. Slow, measured, listening. Who is this? I asked. The breathing stopped. Then the line clicked off. I lowered the phone slowly, keeping my face calm even as my heart began pounding hard enough to feel in my throat. I wasn't imagining things. Not anymore. Not ever again. Someone was pushing, testing, searching for a crack. But they didn't know I had already fortified every inch of my life. By 10:20 p.m., the neighborhood was quiet again. Crickets outside, the hum of a passing car here and there, but my house felt alert, like it was breathing with me, waiting with me. I turned off the TV, stood by the window, hidden behind the curtain, just watching. At 10:14 p.m., movement on the sidewalk caught my eye. A man walking slowly, hands in pockets, head down, dark jacket, same build, same steady pace. He didn't look at my house. Not directly. But his head turned just slightly, just enough to let me know he was aware of it. A knowing turn, a measuring turn. He walked past the magnolia tree, past my mailbox, past the driveway, then stopped across the street. Paused. Stood there for a few seconds, then kept walking. No rush, no hesitation, like he knew exactly what he was doing. I stood still until he disappeared into the dark. If this had been 2 weeks ago, I would have panicked. Called Marcus, called Danielle, told them everything, asked for help. But tonight? No. Fear wasn't controlling me, it was sharpening me. Everything was connected now. The cigarette butt, the open curtains, the unknown call, the man standing across the street. The timing, exactly the day after I saw a lawyer. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. Someone wanted to know what I knew. And deep down, I felt something chillingly certain. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't random. It was connected to Marcus, or Danielle, or whoever they had whispered to. That night, before going to bed, I took the phone in my hands, Richard's voice still saved inside it, and whispered, "I hear you now. I see everything." Because I did. Finally. Clearly. And whoever was circling my house, whoever thought they could scare a 68-year-old widow into signing away her life, they were about to learn something Richard always knew. A woman who has lost everything once is not afraid of losing anything again. And she does not break twice. The truth hides where love once lived. After seeing that man and receiving that silent call, I knew something clearly. I wasn't just being watched, I was being measured. Someone wanted to see how much I knew, and how much longer I'd stay quiet, but they didn't know me, not the real me. When fear fades, instinct takes over. And mine was screaming the same thing Richard had tried to say in that voicemail. "Look at everything, Evelyn. Everything." So that night, after triple locking my doors and closing every curtain tight, I walked toward the hallway closet, the one Richard always kept organized. Not the linen closet, the other one. The one filled with boxes labeled in his handwriting. Taxes, 2005-2010. Insurance house papers, Union, Docs, R. Carter. Personal. That last box was taped shut. Thick, old yellowing tape. I hadn't touched it in a year, not since the funeral. Couldn't bring myself to, but tonight my hands didn't tremble when I reached for it. I carried it to the dining table and set it down gently, like it was alive. I sliced the tape carefully. Inside, everything was neat, folded, stacked, organized. That was Richard. He believed order solved half of life's problems. I found pay stubs, old union letters, receipts from repairs he made around the house, birthday cards from Marcus at age 7, 8, 9, a photo of us at the county fair, laughing, young, stupid in love, but Halfway down, I found a thin manila envelope I didn't recognize. No label, just my husband's handwriting on the corner. Evie, if needed. Those 3 words hit me harder than the voicemail. My throat tightened. My chest warmed and hurt at the same time. I whispered, "Richard, what did you know?" Inside the envelope were several documents. 1, a photocopy of our house deed. 2, a copy of his life insurance policy. 3, 3 bank statements from accounts I didn't know he had. 4, a printed email exchange between Richard and someone named J. Morris, attorney. I froze. Richard had spoken to a lawyer, not Roe. Someone else. When? Why? And why hadn't he told me? I unfolded the first printed email from Richard Carter to James Morris, Eskins. Subject, question about protecting property. The email was dated 5 months before he died. My hands grew cold as I read. My wife doesn't know I'm writing. I don't want to worry her. But my son and daughter-in-law have been bringing up our house often, talking about planning ahead, talking about us signing papers. Something feels wrong. I love them, but I don't trust their intentions. I covered my mouth. There it was. The truth. 5 months early. Before the voicemail. Before the hospital. Before any of this erupted. Richard had seen something, felt something, and tried to protect me before he left. Another email. What legal steps should I take to ensure my wife keeps the house even if something happens to me? And the lawyer answered, place the property in a survivorship deed or a trust in her sole control. Do not sign anything giving your son financial authority. Richard responded, thank you. I'll handle this privately. Privately, meaning he told no one, because he didn't want to scare me, because he wanted to solve the problem without involving me. But something stopped him. His health declined. Life got messy. And then he was gone. I pressed the papers to my chest and whispered, I'm sorry, Richard. I should have looked sooner. Deeper in the box, another envelope. This one smaller. Labeled simply, listen when ready. Inside was a flash drive. A tiny black USB, light, silent, unassuming. I stared at it. My heart thudded slowly, heavy with dread. What was on it? Recordings, documents, a message? But one thing was certain. Richard wanted me to find it only when I was ready. I was ready now. I plugged it into the old laptop we rarely used. The screen flickered alive, the fan whirring like an old man clearing his throat. A single file popped up. Carter to her house. Conversation.wave recording. My stomach dropped. Hands trembling slightly, I clicked play. Static, a bit of wind. Then voices. Marcus. Danielle. My pulse slammed in my ears. The recording continued, muffled but clear enough. Danielle's voice came first. We need to push this. If she signs the papers, we can list the house before summer. Marcus whispered, she's not ready. She's suspicious. Danielle, then make her ready. She trusts you. Use that. Or I will. I felt sick. The recording crackled, then picked up Richard's voice in the distance. Marcus. Dad's coming. Stop talking. Silence. Then the file ended. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. Not crying, not shaking. Just understanding. Everything that had felt strange suddenly fit together like puzzle pieces I never realized were missing. Richard didn't just overhear something. He recorded it, saved it, and hid it for me to find. He saw the storm coming long before I did. I sat in the dark dining room, box open in front of me, laptop glowing, documents spread across the table. Then something inside the manila envelope slipped out and landed on the floor. A key. Small. Old. Attached to a tag with one word. Basement. But Richard and I didn't use the basement for anything except Christmas decorations. Or so I thought. My breath caught. Slowly, carefully, I picked up the key. Everything in my body told me, there's more. There's something down there he wanted you to see. Something he hid because he knew it wasn't safe anywhere else. I clenched the key in my palm. Tomorrow, I would open that door, and whatever waited on the other side, a truth, a warning, a final message, I would be ready. Because now I understood something deeply. Richard wasn't just warning me. He was guiding me, leading me from the grave, step by step, clue by clue, and I wasn't afraid to follow. Some doors stay locked for a reason, but the truth doesn't knock. It waits. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed holding the basement key in my palm, running my thumb over its cold metal grooves. It felt heavier than a key should feel, like it wasn't just opening a door, but a truth I had avoided for too long. By sunrise, I was already dressed. My house was quiet, the kind of quiet that listens. I walked to the hall closet, grabbed the flashlight Richard always kept there, then headed toward the basement door at the end of the hallway. A door I had walked past thousands of times without a second thought. Today, the air around it felt charged. The door was old, painted years ago, the knob cold beneath my fingers. I slipped the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. I exhaled, then turned it. Click. The sound echoed down the hall like a whisper. I pulled the door open slowly. A breath of cool, dusty air swept past me, an air that hadn't moved freely in a long time. I flicked on the flashlight and began stepping down the wooden stairs. Each step creaked softly. Each step carried weight. When I reached the bottom, I paused. I had expected clutter, boxes, old holiday items, forgotten junk. But the basement was clean. Organized. Too organized. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something else. Paper, maybe. Old, preserved paper. Richard hadn't used this space for storage. He'd used it for something deliberate, something private. I scanned the room slowly. To my left, a workbench with tools lined neatly on a pegboard. To my right, metal shelving units with labeled boxes, more precise than anything in the house above, and directly ahead, against the far wall, a locked filing cabinet. My breath caught. Richard had hidden something down here, something important enough to lock away from me, from Marcus, from the world. I walked toward it. There was no keyhole. It used a combination dial. I stared at it, stunned. Richard never used combination locks. He didn't trust them. So why now? I ran my finger along the surface, cold metal, dust, years of secrets. Then something clicked in my mind. The date. The one he used for everything important. July 14th, the day we bought our house, the day Marcus was born, the day he left me the voicemail. I tried 07-14-78, nothing. I tried 07-14-83, nothing. I closed my eyes, exhaled, then whispered, "Richard, help me." And then it hit me. Our anniversary. 4-23-1972. My fingers shook only slightly as I turned the dial. 04-23-72, a soft internal click. The lock released. I froze, took a breath, opened it. Inside were 3 folders and a recorded tape. I opened it on the workbench. Inside were copies of the original house deed, updated mortgage release papers, a document transferring full survivorship ownership to me, and a letter from a title attorney confirming that Richard had removed Marcus from any future claim. My heart pounded. Richard had already protected me before he died. He had legally shielded the house, which meant if Marcus had filed guardianship, if he had pushed me to sign his papers, none of it would have worked. Richard had already outmaneuvered them. I whispered, "Thank you, thank you," before wiping tears with the back of my hand. But this was only the first folder. I opened the second. Inside were notes Richard had written during his treatments, notebooks full of thoughts, fears, observations. One page stopped me cold. Marcus is under pressure. Danielle pushes him. They're drowning in debt. Not safe to leave the house in their reach. Underlined twice. Another note. If anything happens, Evie must know the truth. She must see everything. Then a final line. Don't let them take what we built. My throat tightened until it hurt. But the third folder, that one changed everything. It contained 1. Printed emails between Marcus and a financial consultant. 2. Notes Richard had taken after overhearing conversations. 3. A single sheet titled, Their Plan. My hands froze around it. Richard had documented everything he'd heard. At the top, conversation behind garage, April 3rd. And beneath it, his handwriting, shaky but clear, Danielle. If she signs, the house is ours. Sell for market value, pay off cards. Marcus, I don't want to trick her. Danielle, then don't call it tricking. Call it helping. She's old. She'll understand. Marcus. Dad will know. Danielle. Then don't tell him. I recorded a part of this conversation, saved it. Richard. My vision blurred for a moment. Heat rushed up my throat. My hands trembled. My boy. My only boy. Being pulled into something so dark he couldn't even see how deep he was already in. I steadied myself, closed the folder gently, then looked at the tape. It was an old small recorder, one we hadn't used since the 90s. I pressed play, static. Then voices, Richard whispering, I'm recording this for safekeeping. Something's not right. Then footsteps, voices. Then Danielle, clear as day. The old woman will sign. She trusts Marcus. Use that. Don't be weak. Weak. She called my son weak, manipulated him, used him. Then Marcus's voice. I don't want to hurt her. Danielle, you're not hurting her. You're guiding her. Elder people need guidance. I covered my mouth. My whole body chilled. Then Richard's angry whisper. I knew it. I knew it. Tape clicks off. I stood there in the dim basement, surrounded by truth Richard had hidden like treasure. He wasn't just leaving me hints. He was building a case, a shield, a warning. He tried to protect me from them, and now, even in death, he still was. I exhaled long and slow. Now I had the truth. Proof. Evidence. And someone outside had been watching. Maybe to see if I'd discover it. Maybe to get ahead of me. Either way. I now held every card they didn't want me to find. And I finally understood. This wasn't just about a house. This was about control. And they had underestimated the wrong woman. Tomorrow I would confront the world with everything I had. But tonight I would lock this basement, hide the key, and sleep with the truth beside me, because the next battle was coming, and I was finally ready. When people feel the truth slipping from their hands, they come running for it. I didn't expect them to come back so soon. After leaving the basement with the folders locked again and the key hidden inside my robe pocket, I stayed in the living room for a long time, just sitting in silence. The kind of silence that follows an earthquake. Nothing in the house looked different, but everything felt different. I wasn't the same woman. I couldn't be. By dusk, the sky turned a deep red, almost warning-colored. Birds quieted early. Even the street felt still. That's when I heard it. A car engine, not slow, not casual. Fast. Too fast for Magnolia Street. I stood up, stepped toward the window, and pulled the curtain back just an inch. It was Marcus's car, parking crooked, not even bothering to straighten it. Danielle stepped out of the passenger side before the engine shut off. My breath tightened, not in fear, but in readiness. They weren't supposed to be here today. Not after last night. Not after walking out furious. Something had changed on their end. I knew that kind of desperation. I'd seen it in families before. Children scrambling when they realized the parent had finally woken up. They walked up the path fast, Marcus's jaw clenched. Danielle's eyes sharp as glass. 3 hard knocks. I didn't open immediately. Let them sit in that uncertainty. Let them feel it. Knock, knock, knock. I finally opened the door a few inches. Yes? My voice calm, cold. Marcus stepped forward. Mom, we need to talk. Now. Danielle didn't bother smiling this time. Her expression was tightly controlled, shiny with anger. It's important, she said. I didn't move. I wasn't expecting visitors. Marcus blinked, frustrated. Mom, please, open the door. I stepped back and opened it fully, but didn't offer them to enter. Say what you need to say. They exchanged a quick look, one of those silent conversations married couples have when they're trying to strategize on the fly. Marcus started, Mom, I talked to someone today. I raised an eyebrow. Who? A friend, he said, voice wavering slightly. Someone who said you've been making legal changes. There it was. Information leakage. Someone had told them. Maybe the mysterious watcher. Maybe someone they'd hired. Maybe someone who noticed I'd visited Attorney Rowe's office. Danielle crossed her arms. Is it true? Did you hire a lawyer, Evelyn? I didn't blink. Yes. Marcus inhaled sharply. Why? I believe you know why. Danielle stepped forward, Her voice low, controlled. Evelyn, you're making a mistake, a very big one. I tilted my head. Am I? You're letting people put ideas in your head that don't belong there, Danielle continued. We came to help, and you're acting like we're enemies. I said nothing. Let her keep talking. People reveal themselves when they feel unheard. She stepped closer, too close. Tell me what she filled your head with. I lifted my chin. Truth. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Mom, stop. Stop talking in riddles. We just want to understand. No, I said, you want to control. He froze. Danielle exhaled loudly. Evelyn, this is ridiculous. You're letting your imagination run wild. You're making decisions that affect us. Excuse me? I interrupted quietly. Affect you? Her mouth shut, because she knew she'd said too much. I stepped fully into the doorway so they couldn't enter. Explain to me, I said softly, why my legal decisions should affect either of you. They said nothing. I continued. Unless, of course, you were expecting something? Marcus's eyes darted. Danielle's arms tightened, silence stretched. Then Marcus whispered, voice trembling, Mom, did someone tell you we're planning something? I stared at him. Hard. He looked broken, but not innocent. Never innocent. I chose my words slowly. I received a message, I said, from someone who loved me more than themselves. Danielle rolled her eyes. Oh, God. This again. Marcus's head snapped toward her. Danielle, stop. No, she said, stepping forward. I'm not going to tiptoe while your mother accuses us of plotting. I let the accusation hang in the air, didn't deny it, didn't confirm, just let it breathe. Marcus's voice cracked. Mom, tell me it's not about that recording. I froze inside. For the first time, I froze. Recording? He knew. My face didn't move, but my heart slammed hard. He knew Richard recorded something. Danielle's eyes narrowed at me. Did you find something downstairs? My blood went cold. They knew about the basement, the cabinet, the secrets. They weren't here to talk. They were here to search. Enough, I said sharply. This conversation is over. Marcus stepped forward, panic rising. Mom, wait, please, just tell us what you found. You'll find out soon enough, I said, his face twisted in fear and anger. Mom, that's not fair. Fair? I repeated softly. Was it fair to plan behind my back? He shut down instantly, went silent. Danielle stepped forward again, but I raised my palm. Try it, I said. Take one more step past this door, and I'm calling the police. Her body stiffened, her jaw twitched. Marcus gently touched her arm, pulling her back. We're leaving. She didn't move. He whispered again, firmer, we're leaving. Finally, Danielle stepped back. But before she turned away, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, This isn't over, Evelyn. I smiled, slow, steady, unshakable. No, I said, it's just beginning. They walked down the path, got into the car, drove off too fast. I closed the door softly, not afraid, not shaken, just ready. Because now I knew something vital. They were scared, truly scared. And people who are scared make mistakes. Desperation whispers before it screams. The morning after Marcus and Danielle stormed away from my porch, the house felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet like a storm had passed, but the air still smelled like rain. I made breakfast, though I barely touched it. My mind kept circling one thought. They didn't expect resistance. Now they don't know what I'm capable of. By 10 a.m., the consequences of last night began to ripple. The phone rang. Not an unknown number this time, a local clinic. The nurse introduced herself politely. Mrs. Carter, your son Marcus called, asking if we've noticed any concerns about your memory during your last appointment. I stiffened. I have no memory issues, I said firmly. No, ma'am, you don't, the nurse agreed. We assured him everything in your chart is normal. I thanked her and hung up. A subtle tactic. Marcus fishing for support, trying to build a narrative. 15 minutes later, another call, this time from a home maintenance service. Mrs. Carter, someone asked for an estimate to install railings for an elderly resident. Someone, not me. He was laying breadcrumbs, trying to create a paper trail that suggested decline. Not illegal, not dramatic, but intentional. Clever. Almost clever enough to work, if I didn't already know the truth. By noon, a small envelope appeared on my porch. No name, no return address, just wedged between the screen door and the frame. I opened it slowly. Inside was a pamphlet for assisted living options, and on the back a sticky note. Mom, please look. It's time. Just that. No signature. But the handwriting was Marcus's. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from heartbreak. He wasn't watching from a car. He wasn't lurking in shadows. He was doing something much more painful. He was trying to rationalize his betrayal, trying to make his manipulation look like concern. Around 2 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Not Marcus, not Danielle. It was Miss Lorraine, my neighbor. Evelyn, she said gently, I saw your son out here last night. They left quickly. Everything all right? I hesitated. Neighborly concern can turn into neighborhood gossip overnight. But something about her eyes, soft, steady, made me trust her. Things are complicated, I admitted. She nodded like she understood more than she let on. Just know, she said, lowering her voice, folks round here notice things. People coming by too often. People walking around too late. My pulse quickened. Walking around? She nodded again. I saw someone out front the night before. Tall man. I thought it was a friend of Marcus's, but he never came inside. My stomach dropped, but not from fear. Someone was gathering information. Not attacking, not following, just observing. Whoever it was, they weren't working alone. At 5 p.m., Marcus finally called. His voice was quiet, controlled, like someone rehearsing their lines. Mom, we need to talk. No, Marcus, I said, we don't. Please, he whispered, and it's important. I didn't respond, so he filled the silence. I'm worried about you. You're different. Different. He meant, you're not easy to control anymore. What exactly concerns you? I asked. Long pause. You're shutting me out. You pushed yourself out, I said. His breath wavered, barely audible. Mom, there are things you don't understand. Then explain them. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because the truth would make him look guilty. Finally, I really need you to cooperate. The word hit me hard. Cooperate. That wasn't a son speaking to a mother. That was someone speaking to an obstacle. Marcus, I said, keeping my voice steady. Cooperation ends when deception begins. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then quietly, I didn't want it to be like this. And he hung up, not yelling, not angry, just defeated. At 8 p.m., Danielle texted, not frantic, not unhinged, calculated, cold. Evelyn, I think we started off wrong. We all want what's best for you. Let's talk tomorrow, calmly. I stared at the message a long time. It wasn't reconciliation, it was strategy. She had realized pressure didn't work. Now she was switching to charm, the most dangerous tactic of all. I didn't reply. Not yet. Around 11 p.m., I checked every window, every lock, sat on the edge of the bed thinking about everything happening in slow, strategic waves. And finally something clicked. They weren't escalating out of malice. They were escalating out of fear. Fear of the trust. The lawyer. The evidence Richard left. The possibility that I now had the upper hand. They weren't coming to hurt me physically. They were trying to regain control of the narrative before the legal system got involved. And failing? Badly? I whispered to myself, they're slipping, Richard. Just like you said they would. For the first time, I wasn't scared. Not even shaken, just steady, ready. Because I finally understood Part 12 was coming. The court. The confrontation. The truth out loud. The ending Richard tried to give me, and I planned to walk into that ending with my head high. The truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives quietly, sits beside you and says, you made it. I didn't know what would happen when I walked into Attorney Rowe's office for the last time, holding the folders Richard left behind. I didn't know if this fight would end cleanly or tear my family apart even more. I didn't know if the law would protect me or if the fear I had carried for weeks would finally take shape and stand in front of me. All I knew was this: I was done being afraid. Over the next 2 weeks, everything moved fast, much faster than I expected. Linda filed every document we signed. My doctor completed the competency evaluation. The trust was officially established, and a formal notice went out stating Marcus and Danielle were not allowed to approach me for legal, financial, or medical matters without Linda present. It was protection, real protection, the kind I didn't know I needed, until I did. But the real ending didn't happen in her office. It happened in a courtroom. Marcus filed the petition exactly 1 week after our confrontation. Guardianship, claiming I was confused, vulnerable, showing signs of cognitive decline. The words stung, not because they were true, but because they came from my son. But Linda was ready. She moved faster than he expected. On the morning of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse with my head held high. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't waver. I wore the same earrings Richard gave me on our anniversary. It felt right, like he was walking beside me. Marcus and Danielle were already inside. He looked tired, hollow. She looked furious, like she'd been cheated out of something she believed belonged to her. They didn't greet me, and I didn't offer any greeting in return. When the judge entered, everyone rose, then sat. Marcus spoke first. He tried to sound calm, concerned, reasonable. "Your Honor, my mother has been acting unpredictably, missing details, forgetting conversations, making poor decisions." Linda stood instantly. "Objection, unsupported claims." The judge nodded. "Sustained. Provide evidence, Mr. Carter." Marcus swallowed hard, glanced toward Danielle for reassurance, then shuffled papers that proved nothing, because there was nothing to prove. Then Linda stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't show anger. She didn't need to. She showed the judge my medical competency evaluation, my clean financial records, the trust documentation, Richard's survivorship deed, and finally, with the judge's permission, the recording from the basement. We didn't play the whole thing, just enough. Enough to show intent, enough to show coercion, enough to show that my husband had worried for my safety long before he died. Danielle went pale. Marcus looked like the floor fell out from under him. The judge sat back, eyes softening toward me. "Mrs. Carter," he said gently, "do you feel unsafe?" I looked straight at Marcus when I answered, "I feel disappointed, but not unsafe, because I am protected now." His shoulders slumped. Danielle glared daggers at me, but her hands were shaking. The judge closed the file. Petition denied. Just 2 words, but they lifted a weight that had lived on my back for months. Then his voice softened even more. "Mrs. Carter, if you choose, the court can also issue a protective order regarding financial exploitation." Linda leaned closer to me. "It's your call," she whispered. I thought about it. Thought about the night watcher, the calls, the open gate, the secrets in the basement, the betrayal. Then I shook my head slowly. "No, Your Honor," I said quietly. "I don't want punishment. I just want freedom." Marcus looked down. Danielle turned away. The case closed, and the fight ended. Outside the courthouse, Marcus followed me into the parking lot. Not forcefully, not angrily, just defeated. "Mom," he whispered, I'm sorry." The world seemed to pause. I didn't hug him, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply said, "What you did almost took everything from me, and I can't forget that, Marcus. But I hope one day I can forgive it." Tears filled his eyes. He nodded. Danielle didn't approach. She didn't say a word. She just climbed into their car, slammed the door, and stared straight ahead. That told me everything I needed to know. Marcus hugged himself, not me, and walked away. Maybe this was the beginning of his growth, maybe not. But it was no longer my burden to carry. When I returned home, the house felt lighter. Quiet, but not lonely. Still, but not fearful. I walked to the mantel and touched Richard's photo. "I did it," I whispered. "You led me here, and I made it." For the first time in a long time, I made tea, sat on the porch, watched the magnolia tree sway in the wind, and breathed, really breathed. No watchers, no cars idling, no calls, no fear. Just peace. A fragile, beautiful peace. And the strange thing? It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival, like reclaiming my life, one truth at a time. Later that night before bed, I listened to Richard's voicemail one last time. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted to hear his voice. Evelyn, please, be careful. I told him softly. I finally am. Then I saved the voicemail, not as a warning, but as a memory, and put every document back in the basement cabinet, locked it, closed it, and walked up the stairs lighter than I had in months. Because this was the end of the story Richard started, and the beginning of my life on my own terms. In the end, Evelyn didn't win because she fought harder. She won because she finally believed her own instincts. The instincts Richard tried to protect her with, even after he was gone. Sometimes the greatest battles we face come from the people closest to us, and sometimes surviving those battles means choosing yourself, even when it breaks your heart. Evelyn walked out of that courtroom not just with her home, but with her voice, her clarity, her dignity, and she walked into the rest of her life with something even stronger, a peace she earned and a future she reclaimed. If Evelyn's story moved you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let us know what moment hit you hardest. Thank you for watching. And remember, your strength doesn't fade with age. Sometimes it finally awakens.